Hello, and welcome to the Brown Initiative for Discipleship and Evangelism. My name is Ethan Brown, and this is BIDE. This video is being produced in cooperation with the Partnership Program at Gordon-Conwell Theological Seminary, where I'm a student in the Doctor of Ministry program in the Outreach and Discipleship track. If you'd like to learn more about the Partnership Program, or if you'd like to become one of my partners and join me in my educational endeavors, I'll leave a link for that in the description below. And if BIDE is helpful to you, and if you think it's useful, please feel free to leave a like and share this with someone that you know that might also benefit. I'd appreciate that. In the last episode, I discussed with you the idea of friendship and its relationship to evangelism. I suggested to you that evangelism thrives in an atmosphere of healthy friendship, that if you have a good, strong friendship, that your opportunities to share the truth that you're a follower of Jesus and that you'd love it if your friends were too, those will come about because of your love for the other person. Today I'd like to talk with you a little bit about something that I think that we have to hold in tension in order to do that. And that is two elements of Christian life that tend to both be necessary in order for evangelism to actually happen, but that are in tension with one another. They tend to pull us in different directions. The one is the idea of being a strategic and intentional thinker. That if we're going to go about evangelism, then being purposeful about it is probably necessary. And being strategic and intentional and focused on the reality that, yes, this is something that we actually are called to do and want to do and are supposed to do. So that's one element. The other element is that Christian life is meant to be lived in a kind of authentic and receptive love. That genuine love needs to be there. You need to genuinely and really be somebody's friend in order to have kind of the credentials that are necessary to share this thing that's so important to you with somebody else. Why should they care? Well, they come to care when they care about you, and they come to care about you when they know that you care about them. And there's really no way to fake any of that. It's all got to be real and authentic. Now, I said a moment ago that these two things are in tension. They tend to pull us in different directions. Because if, on the one hand, I have authentic love for somebody, then I love them as they are. God so loved the world at the point when it was still his enemy. The sending of Jesus didn't come when the world got cleaned up. The sending of Jesus was so that the world might become cleansed. So the authentic love receives a person who lives in hostility to these core tenets that I believe. They haven't accepted those things, and I accept them. I even accept their lack of acceptance of things that are very much at the core of what I believe. If I'm going to be able to have genuine, authentic friendship, that's absolutely necessary. That's got to be there. The loving the person as they are. On the other hand, if I'm there, then where does the strategy come in? And strategic thinking begins with the assessment that the world needs what I've got. That I have received something that the world hasn't yet received. And because I've got this thing, it's a good thing that I need, and so does everybody else. And so if they don't have it yet, then I've assessed them as lacking something that's really important. And so I need to make sure that they get it, and my desire is that they should not only get it, but receive it and welcome it and take it on. Those two things live in tension, because if I embrace the one without the other, if I embrace the idea of acceptance without strategy, then I'm willing to love the person as they are and just love them all the way to the grave without ever getting any of the gospel into them at all. On the other hand, if I have a strategy without love, without acceptance, then I'm likely to try and get the gospel into them, but I'm unlikely to let them come into me. I'm unwilling to let them love me until they've got the gospel. And so even though I may carry out an awful lot of relationally centered activities, things that are building a relationship, and if I didn't have the strategic thinking dominating everything in me, they might lead me to an authentic connection with that person. I may do all that stuff, but because strategy is dominating me and driving out love, then I'm going to be doing those things for a purpose. I'm not doing them for themselves and for that person. I'm not welcoming that person. Not really. I'm doing them so that I can sell that person, persuade that person, manipulate that person. So if I have either one of these and not the other, then everything kind of falls apart, and evangelism rapidly becomes a pretty gross process. I think evangelism has gotten a pretty bad name in the world because of these mindsets. And that the mindset that allows these things to become divergent and drift apart from one another will almost always result in embracing one and shunning the other. That real healthy evangelism needs to bring those two things together, but for the most part that doesn't happen. So evangelism gets a bad name in the outsider, that Christians and Christianity get a bad name because of strategy without love, strategic thinking without acceptance. And if you've ever run into that before, especially if you were fooled by it, then you're likely to think of evangelism as incredibly, incredibly gross. That the idea of evangelism, especially if you are not a Christian, it's just that strategic thinking makes you into an object. It demeans you. It makes you a mark. It makes you a customer. And all the while you're trying to be a friend. And it's just gross. On the other hand, there is the ditch that comes when you embrace acceptance and love without strategy. And this is the realm where evangelism gets a bad name from the insider's perspective. It is so much easier to live just accepting people as they are and just accept that some people aren't Christians and accept that, and maybe that's fine. Maybe they don't have to be. Maybe they're better off as not Christians. To reject the whole perspective that says that really we all have sin in our lives from which we need redemption and rescue and salvation, and to just get rid of that. Now, if you fall into that ditch, you're probably going to have nice, warm experiences from the world that crucified Jesus. You're almost going to be a welcome ally, wearing the name Christian, going to church regularly, but not really a useful soldier. In fact, maybe even a captive of war. And you live there long enough, you may challenge your own Christianity. You may give it up. Really, these things really pull in different directions. To use language that I learned from a book, it is a cross-pressure situation that the Christian has to stand in. If you're going to be able to actually do evangelism, you're going to have to learn that these two things have got to become mastered by you. And you're going to have to build what I will refer to as an evangelist's mindset, one that holds strategy and acceptance somehow together. Now, how do we do that? Well, the answer to that question as is true of almost every question that a Christian ever asks, is we look at Jesus. We look at him because he was able to keep those two things in perfect tension. And he lived with them unified inside of him. Why do I say that? Well, I look at his life. Let me start in the strategy realm. Jesus is the most strategic thinker that the world has ever known. He was born into this world with a destiny for global conquest. That the Old Testament makes it very clear that a king is going to be born into Judaism who will take the throne of David, and that king will be a forever king. But not just a forever king of the Jews. No. He will be King of Kings. The nations may rage in vain, but God laughs at them and then says to the Messiah, "Ask of me, and I will give you the nations as your inheritance." That's Psalm 2. Look it up. The goal of the Messiah has always been global kingship, that he is King of Kings, Lord of Lords. Well, to accomplish that, this little, carpenter's son, who little in that he comes from a little nation. It's not global hegemon. They don't reign over the world. They're not a massive world power. They are a small power. And they are not kings of kings. There are nations that are doing that when Jesus is born. Rome is very definitely king of kings. Herod is a king in Israel. He's a king over Palestine. He rules there, but only as a client king to the Roman emperor. So the idea of King of Kings, sure, that's out there. The idea that a Jewish person, Israel, would become the king of all the kings of the earth, that's insane. So if he's going to pull that off, Jesus has got to think strategically his whole life. And his strategy is 12 guys that he invests. Is it this way? 12. He invests in just 12 people. He spends a lot of time preaching. He was clearly kind of a revival preacher in the first century Judaism of his day. And I think that fit into his strategy. He's preparing a field for the 12 guys to get out and work in. And they're going to work and train other, 12 guys. It's like 144 who will then go and train their 12 guys, and on it will go, as discipleship spreads out and kind of takes over the world. That global conquest is in Jesus's mind, and it's very clear in all of the decisions he makes. The lion's share of his time is not invested in the masses. He'll go and he'll preach to the masses, but the lion's share of his time is given to 12 guys, and the most intimate guys, the most intimate time is given to just 3, Peter, James, and John. Those 3 guys, and sometimes Andrew, 4. So those 3 guys will function as kind of a micro group for Jesus, and the 12 is kind of a small group. And it's into that he really empties his whole self. He will do specialized training and teaching with them. When he teaches a parable, he'll make it clear. They'll ask, "Why do you do that? You teach these weird stories. Why are you doing that?" And he'll make it clear, well, if someone really wants to learn, they're going to have ears to hear. And if they don't, then my riddle will keep them out. And if they don't want me, I'm not going to force them to have me. But to you, I give the secrets. And I'm going to teach you so that you can find the people who are interested. You can train them. You can teach them in my ways. He does that kind of investment. When he gets vulnerable, Jesus will do it with those 3. He'll take them up on the mountain. Peter goes nuts going, "Hey, we got to build houses for you guys. Well, this is really good for us to be here. Let's just stay right here." That kind of deeper work. He takes them to the garden and is disappointed when they fall asleep because he kind of needs them. That intimate circle are the ones that he really pours himself into. Now, you might look at that and say, that doesn't seem like a great idea. If you want to take over the world, you don't need 12 guys. You need 1,200 or 12,000. I mean, surely you can invest more broadly than that. And Jesus is thinking, no, my strategy is to go deep and change a heart. And in the changing of that heart, I want to change that person to the point where they can go into somebody else's heart, and the same transformation can be caught in that other person. And then they're going to do it 3, 4, 12 guys at a time, just like I did it with just 12 guys. They're going to do it. Men and women are going to go out, and they're going to strategically plan to build these friendships and relationships that are then going to be useful to the kingdom. Jesus was a strategic thinker. But then look at how he is with these 12 guys. And they blow it with him all the time. They demonstrate to him that they are not like him. So they will do things like, you know what, should we call down fire from heaven on this entire village full of people that includes a lot of children and babies? Because they rejected you. They wouldn't let us walk through their way. They told us no, because we were going to Jerusalem and they're Samaritans. Let's just burn them all up. And Jesus is like, no, that's not who I am. That's who you are. Well, but I still love you. And he stays in relationship with them. He doesn't kick them out. He's willing to be friends with them if they are willing to be friends with him. Or 2 of them will come, I think it's the same 2, will come and say, hey, we want you to do whatever we ask. And he says, what do you want? And he says, well, when you come into your glory, because we can tell you're king, and we know you're supposed to be king of the kings. You're supposed to have the kingship over the whole world. When you get there, we want one of us to sit at your right hand and one to sit at your left. And they're both thinking, I want the right hand. They're like that. And he's like, is this what I've been showing you all this time? He is friends with people who very clearly are not like him, but he likes them. He accepts them where they are. And because he's Jesus, he can change them. But it's that loving, continuous friendship with people who would be like, hey, there were a bunch of people that wanted to bring your kids, but we wouldn't let them. Aren't you proud of us? Jesus is indignant with them, but he tells them, hey, bring the kids, come on. But what he doesn't do is cut them off. Now, Jesus's strategy is very clearly there, and yet at the same time, his strategy is to love them. Just pour himself out for them. He will teach them if they're willing to listen. They clearly were. They realized, okay, this Jesus guy has got something special. It may be that once your friends meet Jesus, they'll be willing to listen too. They may not be willing to listen to you, but once they've met Jesus, they'll be like, wow, there's something really compelling about him. Because there is. And Jesus is what compels. Jesus is what drives. But he's just willing to hang on there. Now, how does he keep the tension? If I may suggest, this is something that I see. You think through it. You decide whether this is on to something or way off. It seems to me that when it comes to his strategic thinking, that appears to be something that he kept mostly between himself and God. He will be clear and transparent with people he can be clear and transparent with. So once you get to a certain phase of relationship, you can even say to people, hey, you know what I'm doing with you, I think you can do with other people. Let's keep doing it, but start thinking that way. Jesus did that. When he called some of his friends, he told them, come with me, and I will make you fishers of men. And he didn't hide the ball. But when it comes to his strategic thinking, I think mostly that's between him and God. And that Jesus is maintaining who he is as the strategic individual, the person who is faithful to God and knows he's among people that aren't, not the way that he is. And he intends to maintain his faith with God so that and maintain his relationship with them so that they'll catch that faith. But he's not intending to push it on them. He will wait until they are ready to kind of take the next step. He will always take the next step because he never loses sight of why he's here. That strategy stays with him all the time. But that's just it. It's marshaling him. It's in control of him. And he's using that with God. He's thinking that way and praying that way for his friends, about his friends. But he's not manipulating his friends. He doesn't dominate his friends. In fact, Jesus is willing to make friends with people that aren't willing to make friends with him, and he'll let them. The rich young ruler comes to him and says, "What do I lack to inherit eternal life?" And he says, "Go and sell everything you got and come follow me." That "come follow me" part is the same thing that he said to Peter, Andrew, James, and John, and so on. It might have been that if this guy had gone and sold everything that he had and then come and followed Jesus, you would have had to learn his name if you were a little kid growing up in church, because he might have been one of the 12. And he loved him. He wanted him. But the guy was really rich, and he didn't want to sell the stuff, so he just walked away. Jesus' strategic nature was such that he respected the right of the other person, that even though he loves him, because he loves him, he's willing to respect that as a decision-making mind and let them go if they don't want to come along. At the same time, he can sit there with somebody, and don't you know, it's got to be uncomfortable to be the Prince of Peace and hear them calling out for the Holocaust of an entire people group. Let's wipe out the Samaritans. They rejected you. Let's destroy them. That difference in value and worldview it's immeasurable. It's so huge. You are like off by just a couple inches, but also 4 light years away from your start point. You are in very different places. You have ended up light years apart from one another. It is a mess. And yet Jesus sits there with these people that are not like him, and he just loves them. And because he loves them, his strategy works. The love is what gives him the right to make them his own. Well, when we are servants of Jesus, we are not Jesus. So we don't have the kind of claims on people that Jesus actually rightfully had. So we have to do what Jesus did, perhaps a bit more. Keeping that strategy in ourselves is absolutely essential, because if I don't think strategically, then I will never talk about Jesus. I'll just love and accept you right into the grave and perhaps right into hell. There is something about maintaining my strategic connection to the Lord that is necessary if I'm ever going to talk about the Lord. But at the same time, I have to look at the Lord and how he treated people. And I have to say, you know what? If you never come to the Lord, that's not my job. My job is to love you, and I'm going to do that. Why? Because I've seen Jesus do it. And if he can do it, man, I'm a whole lot closer to you than he ever was to me. If he can do it for me, then I can do it with you. And if it takes us a year, if it takes us 5 years of friendship, where you're over eating in my house and we are going to the ball games of your kids, and you clearly have very divergent value system from me, that's okay. I'm going to stick in this because A, you're my friend and I love you, and B, because I'm connected to God, and he says the most important thing for me to do is to be loving people. And because I love you and accept you, I also want to share with you the most important thing that I have. You see, that's the point at which the tensions meet. It's at that point where genuine love, not manipulative, strategic friendship, but genuine love meets strategy. And those come together in a single mindset that I see in Jesus, and I can see in some of us. I'd like for it to be everywhere, because I think Jesus is pretty beautiful. And really, maintaining this mindset is one of the things that I think Jesus wants us to do. Because God so loved the world that he sent Jesus. And Jesus sent us for the honor of Christ and for the life of the world.